is more than just a brand. And even right there, I mean, I have more to say on that, but even just with that, right? Like, look into yourself in your own life, the brands that you're building, you know, whether it's a brick and mortar business, whether it's an online service-based business, whether it's a personal brand, you're like an influencer or something. What kind of brand are you building, and like, what's the meaning behind it? Hey all, it's Parker with UPBEAT. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Can't believe the holidays are already here. I feel like time is going by super fast. But thank you very much for listening in and for being here. Got some really good episodes lined up with amazing guests, and we're going to get rocking with those again next week. But with it just being right after Thanksgiving, I wanted to take a deeper dive into the lessons we can learn from last week's episode with Parker from So Good. So Good is a local nonprofit here in Boise, Idaho, where Parker famously says to be kind and do something good for no reason. In the episode, Parker shares his personal experiences, working with food banks and serving veterans and first responders, things like that. It just goes to show that even when you feel like you have nothing to offer or very little to offer, there's always something. And the act of, doing small things for people, giving, serving others, that can provide a lot of purpose and meaningfulness for you and your life too. You as the individual will benefit from that as well. So one of the most underrated ways to help with depression and things like that, it's just to clue yourself in with good people, make good connections and serve others.
I don't know. I'm just such a proponent of finding a way to connect with somebody else and give back. And I know that's such a weird thing. A lot of times people say, like, I don't feel like going outside, so I can't do what you do. I can't connect with other people because I have nothing to give. And if when I feel like giving something, and I'll say, well, just go with me to the food bank. And what we'll do is we'll just sort cans, right? Like there'll be a bunch of cans on a table and we'll sort them and we'll talk. By the time we're done, the person feels better. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? You feel like you're going to give and you don't have any more, but then you feel so much better. And so I try to be very delicate with that. But I feel like as you begin, it's like, there's like that famous saying, like, you just make your bed every day and it'll change your day. And as you begin to do those very small steps, and I don't think you can go from depression to just, the next day. But if you can do those healthy steps one at a time, and one of them is trying to figure out a way to connect and help your fellow man. And I know it sounds so backward to what we're thinking, like, you're depressed, how are you going to help anyone else? But it will pull you out if you can find somebody to connect with and help and love. It will begin to stir something in you that will give you some purpose.
So number 2 is turning adversity into positive action. So actually the origin of So Good comes from kind of a cluster of adversities that Parker was going through. The loss of his father and the Las Vegas shootings from a few years ago, those were really eye-opening experiences that led him to creating So Good and then having a positive impact on a ton of people's lives, a ripple effect that now it's innumerable. You don't know how many people have been impacted positively because Parker has created So Good. And it wouldn't have happened if some of those things, those hard things didn't happen in his life to kind of open him up to that opportunity. And the lesson here is powerful. Adversity can be a catalyst for positive change. And we can see that clearly in Parker's story here with So Good.
My dad passed away in 2015 of a brain tumor, and that really set me on a trajectory that I see now. But it's really hard when that happens, right? Like, all you know is that, like, your father has passed, and it's difficult. You instantly realize, like, the shortness of life. Not like you don't before, but you more, just more so realize how short this life is and things like that. And then, I went to my dad's funeral, and a bunch of his buddies are there, and they're in their 50s, and they're like, your dad was this. He was amazing, and he was kind, and he was generous. It really helped me. My dad passing was like, live in the moment. So I would say that was the beginning of So Good. And then 2 years later, I was doing some work. I was out in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was, riding the elevator, and I saw these guys were dressed like they were going to a country concert. And I was like, what's going on? Like, oh, there's a big country concert across the street. You should go. So a buddy of mine were like, oh yeah, we'll go. And then, as you know, there was a mass shooting that happened as we were, on our way, and 58 people passed away. And I had a really rough time when I came back to Idaho because, I mean, just like what's happening in Israel or anything, if you're there you very much understand it, and it's like, wow, and you live in it, but then you come home and everyone is just kind of, they're doing their day-to-day lives as they should, and I had a really rough time with that transition. And so I started just kind of doing things around the community to help and just really ground me. So I would go work at the food bank for a while, or I would go down to the VA home and just, play games, Monopoly or something, or poker with veterans. And then one day someone was like, "Hey man, that's so good." And that's the story. So the two stories I would say that are the catalyst, the seeds of So Good, is those two experiences in 2015 when my dad passed away of a brain tumor, and then in 2017.
Number 3, the importance of building community and purposeful brands. Parker explains to us in that episode from last week that So Good is more than just a brand. And even right there, I mean, I have more to say on that, but even just with that, right? Like, look into yourself in your own life, the brands that you're building, whether it's a brick and mortar business, whether it's an online service-based business, whether it's a personal brand, you're like an influencer or something. What kind of brand are you building? And like, what's the meaning behind it? Is it more than just a brand? And for Parker with So Good, he says that it's more than just a brand. It's a mission. It's a way of life, promoting positivity and building a stronger community. And as I mentioned earlier, a phrase that he kind of coined was doing good for no reason. When you look around at our world, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens for no reason. Think of the last time you had a bad day, you had to change a tire, you were late to something that was really important, like whatever it is, we all have bad days. There's a lot of bad that happens for no reason, it seems like. And so what Parker's mission is with So Good is to do good for no reason. Those small little acts of kindness, that goes a long way. So just wrapping up here, I wanted to challenge you to reflect on these lessons. Think about how you can incorporate these lessons into your own life. We can all be better about the small acts of kindness. And then one that's really resonating with me right now for UPBEAT, is building a stronger community. Sometimes I feel like I don't really have a community around UPBEAT, and I can be better in that way. So Parker was really inspiring for me in that way. Like, I want to build a stronger community and have more meaning behind what I do and what it is that I'm building. But there's lots of really good takeaways from that episode, more than just these 3 for sure. So if you haven't yet, take a listen to that episode from last week with Parker Harger from So Good. See if you have some different takeaways that maybe I didn't mention here today. But thanks again for being here, y'all. I really appreciate you. UPBEAT, we've been back since the relaunch, like 2 months or so, and it is going phenomenally. I'm having a ton of fun. These are amazing people that I'm having on the show, and we've got some more stacked up for weeks to come, taking us into the new year, which I can't believe it's already almost 2024. Again, thanks for being here, listening in. Till next time, here's your reminder to be upbeat, and I'll see you next week.